Chapter 8 of The Jewel of Seven Stars. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. The Jewel of Seven Stars by Bram Stoker. Chapter 8 The Finding of the Lamps. Sergeant Daw at first made some demur, but finally agreed to advise privately on a matter which might be suggested to him. He added that I was to remember that he only undertook to advise, for if action were required, he might have to refer the matter to headquarters. With this understanding I left him in the study, and brought Miss Trelawny and Mr. Corbeck to him. Nurse Kennedy resumed her place at the bedside before we left the room. I could not but admire the cautious, cool-headed precision with which the traveller stated his case. He did not seem to conceal anything, and yet he gave the least possible description of the objects missing. He did not enlarge on the mystery of the case; he seemed to look on it as an ordinary hotel theft. Knowing, as I did, that his one object was to recover the articles before their identity could be obliterated, I could see the rare intellectual skill with which he gave the necessary matter and held back all else, though without seeming to do so. Truly, thought I, this man has learned the lesson of the Eastern bazaars, and with Western intellect has improved upon his masters. He quite conveyed his idea to the detective, who, after thinking the matter over for a few moments, said: "Pot or scale? That is the question." "What does that mean?" asked the other, keenly alert. "An old thieves' phrase from Birmingham. I thought that in these days of slang everyone knew that. In old times at Broome, which had a lot of small metal industries, the gold and silversmiths used to buy metal from almost anyone who came along. And as metal in small quantities could generally be had cheap when they didn't ask where it came from, it got to be a custom to ask only one thing, whether the customer wanted the goods melted, in which case the buyer made the price, and the melting pot was always on the fire. If it was to be preserved in its present state at the buyer's option, it went into the scale and fetched standard price for old metal. There is a good deal of such work done still, and in other places than Broome. When we're looking for stolen watches we often come across the works, and it's not possible to identify wheels and springs out of a heap, but it's not often that we come across cases that are wanted. Now, in the present instance, much will depend on whether the thief is a good man. That's what they call a man who knows his work. A first-class crook will know whether a thing is of more value than merely the metal in it, and in such case he would put it with someone who could place it later on, in America or France perhaps. By the way, do you think anyone but yourself could identify your lamps?" "No one but myself." "Are there others like them?" "Not that I know of," answered Mr. Corbeck, "though there may be others that resemble them in many particulars." The detective paused before asking again: "Would any other skilled person, at the British Museum for instance, or a dealer, or a collector like Mr. Trelawny, know the value, the artistic value, of the lamps?" "Certainly. Anyone with a head on his shoulders would see at a glance that the things were valuable." The detective's face brightened. "Then there is a chance. If your door was locked and the window shut, the goods were not stolen by the chance of a chambermaid or a boots comin' along. Whoever did the job went after it special, and he ain't goin' to part with his swag without his price. This must be a case of notice to the pawnbrokers. There's one good thing about it anyhow, that the hue and cry needn't be given. We needn't tell Scotland Yard, unless you like. We can work the thing privately. If you wish to keep the thing dark, as you told me at the first, that is our chance." Mr. Corbeck, after a pause, said quietly: I suppose you couldn't hazard a suggestion as to how the robbery was effected?" The policeman smiled the smile of knowledge and experience. "In a very simple way, I have no doubt, sir. That is how all these mysterious crimes turn out in the long run. The criminal knows his work and all the tricks of it, and he is always on the watch for chances. Moreover, he knows by experience what these chances are likely to be, and how they usually come. The other person is only careful; he doesn't know all the tricks and pits that may be made for him, and by some little oversight or other he falls into the trap. When we know all about this case, you will wonder that you did not see the method of it all along." This seemed to annoy Mr. Corbeck a little. There was decided heat in his manner as he answered: "Look here, my good friend, there is not anything simple about this case, except that the things were taken. The window was closed, the fireplace was bricked up. There is only one door to the room, and that I locked and bolted. There is no transom; I have heard all about hotel robberies through the transom. I never left my room in the night. I looked at the things before going to bed, and I went to look at them again when I woke up. If you can rig up any kind of simple robbery out of these facts, you are a clever man. That's all I say. Clever enough to go right away and get my things back." Miss Trelawny laid her hand upon his arm in a soothing way, and said quietly: "Do not distress yourself unnecessarily. I am sure they will turn up." Sergeant Daw turned to her so quickly that I could not help remembering vividly his suspicions of her, already formed, as he said: "May I ask, miss, on what you base that opinion?" I dreaded to hear her answer, given to ears already awake to suspicion, but it came to me as a new pain or shock all the same. "I cannot tell you how I know; but I am sure of it." The detective looked at her for some seconds in silence, and then threw a quick glance at me. Presently he had a little more conversation with Mr. Corbeck as to his own movements, the details of the hotel and the room, and the means of identifying the goods. Then he went away to commence his inquiries, Mr. Corbeck impressing on him the necessity for secrecy lest the thief should get wind of his danger and destroy the lamps. Mr. Corbeck promised, when going away to attend to various matters of his own business, to return early in the evening and to stay in the house. All that day Miss Trelawny was in better spirits and looked in better strength than she had yet been, despite the new shock and annoyance of the theft which must ultimately bring so much disappointment to her father. We spent most of the day looking over the curio treasures of Mr. Trelawny. From what I had heard from Mr. Corbeck, I began to have some idea of the vastness of his enterprise in the world of Egyptian research, and with this light everything around me began to have a new interest. As I went on, the interest grew; any lingering doubts which I might have had changed to wonder and admiration. The house seemed to be a veritable storehouse of marvels of antique art. In addition to the curios, big and little, in Mr. Trelawny's own room, from the great sarcophagi down to the scarabs of all kinds in the cabinets, the great hall, the staircase landings, the study, and even the boudoir were full of antique pieces which would have made a collector's mouth water. Miss Trelawny from the first came with me, and looked with growing interest at everything. After having examined some cabinets of exquisite amulets, she said to me in quite a naïve way: "You will hardly believe that I have of late seldom even looked at any of these things. It is only since Father has been ill that I seem to have even any curiosity about them; but now they grow and grow on me to quite an absorbing degree. I wonder if it is that the collector's blood which I have in my veins is beginning to manifest itself. If so, the strange thing is that I have not felt the call of it before.